Captain Francis McCullagh, a seasoned Irish-British war correspondent and Catholic journalist, penned The Bolshevik Persecution of Christianity in 1924 after direct experience in revolutionary Russia, including imprisonment by the Reds during the 1918-1920 Civil War period. His first-hand observations, fluency in Russian, and prior travels there lent raw authenticity to this unsparing exposé, positioning it as one of the earliest Western accounts piercing the Soviet information blackout. The book methodically catalogues the Bolshevik assault on Orthodox Christianity, not as incidental anti-clericalism, but as a deliberate crusade to eradicate religion as a competing authority, using mob violence, show trials, and state-engineered schisms to humiliate and destroy the church. McCullagh opens by demolishing any notion of Bolshevik tolerance, showing how the 1917-1918 decrees on church separation were a smokescreen for plunder, church valuables seized under pretext of famine relief, but mostly melted down to fund the Red War machine, with priests beaten or shot for protesting. He details early 1918 outrages in Moscow and Petrograd, where armed thugs desecrated cathedrals, turning altars into latrines and icons into targets for mockery, framing this not as spontaneous anarchy, but as orchestrated by commissars who saw orthodoxy as the spiritual backbone of Tsarism and thus the primary ideological foe. The author blasts the regime's logic. Religion poisons the proletariat's class consciousness, so priests are counter-revolutionaries by vocation, justifying their liquidation without trial. This prefigures the Black Book's Red Terror, but McCullagh personalizes it with accounts of bishops lynched by sailors and peasants forced at gunpoint to spit on crosses. A core focus is Patriarch Tikhon, whom McCullagh portrays as a tragic hero who initially anathematized the Bolsheviks in 1918, calling them monsters covered with blood, only to face retaliation, house arrest, isolation, and pressure to repent via staged trials where clergy were tortured into false denunciations. McCullagh reveals how the regime countered with the living church schism, bribing or coercing priests into a puppet synod that elected a compliant patriarch, but he argues this farce fooled no one. Underground loyalty to Tikhon persisted, exposing Bolshevik impotence against deep faith. This episode provokes starkly. Tikhon's partial 1922 recantation to save clergy lives is critiqued by McCullagh as a necessary compromise, yet he warns it emboldened Reds to demand total surrender, mirroring how concessions to totalitarians invite escalation, a lesson uncomfortably relevant beyond Bolshevism. McCullagh's fieldwork shines in rural vignettes, entire monasteries razed, nuns raped or exiled, village priests hanged on icons as examples, with quotas for church closures driving local Soviets to frenzy. He estimates thousands of clergy dead by 1922, not from war, but targeted purges. Bolsheviks weaponized famine and conscription against believers, burning Bibles publicly, while Methodist dupes touring show churches praised the new freedom. McCullagh mocks these gullible Westerners as useful idiots blind to the charade. He ties this to class war insanity. Illiterate peasants cling to faith despite terror, while urban atheists wield power, questioning why an enlightened vanguard needed bayonets to kill God. The book's politically incorrect edge lies here, refusing to psychologize Reds as misguided idealists, but calling them sadistic ideologues drunk on destruction. Drawing from his own Red captivity, McCullagh describes clergy jammed into disease-ridden prisons where atheist guards forced liturgies into obscenities, or seminaries converted to brothels. He uncovers early Gulag prototypes holding bishops, with forced labor justified as re-education that more often meant death. Show trials of hierarchs, complete with planted evidence, are dissected as theater to demoralize flocks. Yet McCullagh notes ironic backfire. Martyrs' blood galvanized resistance, turning persecution into unintended evangelism. This forces reflection. Bolshevism claimed scientific inevitability, yet resorted to Roman-era barbarism against unarmed monks, suggesting a regime haunted by Christianity's moral authority it could neither refute nor ignore. McCullagh extends the indictment to Baptists and Lutherans, whose churches were torched despite proletarian pretensions, and Catholics, few but viciously hit as Vatican spies, with Irish missionaries like himself eyed suspiciously. He lambasts global silence, especially Anglican bishops fawning over Reds. The book ends prophetically. Unless the world confronts this religious genocide, Bolshevism's export, already stirring in Asia, will repeat the horror globally. McCullagh's prose, fiery, eyewitness-driven, makes this a riveting polemic, not dry history. Its bias is overt Catholic sympathy, critiquing even Tikhon's caution, yet reviewers praise its factual goldmine for future scholars, untainted by Soviet lies. Thought-provokingly non-PC, it rejects both sides' equivocation. Bolsheviks weren't reformers, but antichrist figures waging holy war against Christ, their atheism a faith as fanatical as any, and Christianity's survival despite odds indicts their entire utopia. Analyzing it today, amid Black Book echoes, reveals a timeless truth. Total states fear transcendent loyalties most, crushing them first, and often failing.